And to talk a little bit more about the prospect for third parties going forward, I'm joined now by 2012 Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein. Dr. Stein, thank you so much, first of all, for being with me.
Thank you.
When you ran for president last year, you campaigned on a platform that would have allowed for an alternative to the political gridlock we so often see in Washington. If this was the campaign year, with the election, just a week or so away, do you think your message would have resonated differently with the American people?
I think the message resonated in 2012, and it's resonating all the more now. In fact, I think history continues to, shall we say, validate what we were talking about, that we need a politics of integrity, a politics that's of, by, and for the people, because people are getting creamed right now. If you look at 1 out of every 2 Americans, according to the Census Bureau, is in poverty or low income and heading towards poverty. 39 million students are indentured servants. They're in debt. Students and recent graduates who don't have jobs that can repay their college loans. The Census Bureau says that 9 out of 10 jobs being created in the next decade are going to continue to be low wage. Millions of families continue to be underwater. Meanwhile, the wealthy few are richer than ever. And, the political establishment only digs us in deeper, imposing austerity on everyday people while they squander trillions on wars we don't need, on Wall Street bailouts, $85 billion every month, which continues, and continuing tax giveaways for the very wealthy, and enormous waste on this massive wasteful private health insurance bureaucracy. We have serious problems. We can solve them. But it takes changing power holders to do that. And what's very exciting, I think, is that if you look at our communities, there are rebellions in full swing, whether you're looking at workers going out on strike, looking at college students who are standing up for reducing the costs of college, Occupy student debt, and so on. The Idle No More campaign of indigenous people who are becoming involved to stand up for treaty rights and for protecting land, the young people who are involved in the climate fight, to stop fracking and the exploitation of the Arctic and offshore oil and tar sands. There is a rebellion in full swing, and what's really exciting now is that in our communities we see alternative candidates who are running competitive races, and who are running with independent politics, a real politics of integrity that people are clamoring for. And there's some really exciting examples. Howie Hawkins in New York, running for city council, who got 48% of the vote last time around. He's close to breaking through and has been leading the charge for an economy that works for everyday people in our communities, with living wages, with worker-owned cooperatives, with local community banks and municipal utilities that can provide energy at good rates and clean, renewable energy. We have a candidate, an independent candidate, on the ballot for the first time that an independent has ever gotten on the ballot in Charlotte, North Carolina. A 20-something named Michael Zitkow, who's running as an independent, for the first time that an independent's gotten on the ballot and is standing up, for example, to stop $85 million.
And indeed, we are seeing many people rise up on the local level. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the system. Of course, it was always the problem, and still is, that third parties are really marginalized from the debates, at least at the presidential level, and therefore from the mainstream consciousness. So do we need to first change the rules before we can expect to change the system, or is what you are advocating for now, which is changing little by little on the local level, is that the way to do it?
I think small changes make for big changes, and unfortunately, at the rate the economy is going, the American people are not going to stand for it. We're sort of hitting the breaking point. In many ways, we're over the breaking point. So I don't think we know when exactly these small changes will become big changes, but they're going to add up in the same way that, people didn't know when the wall was going to come down in East Germany. On the day that it did, the democracy advocates were saying maybe in 10 years. It came down that day. And from what we're seeing, again, all across the country, in Toledo, Ohio, Sean Nestor, who's running a very competitive campaign for city council, Joe Carvalho here in Massachusetts, who is running in a two-way race against a mayor who's been connected by local investigative reporting to the mafia, who has a mafia member in his economic development cabinet, with a scandal brewing in Fall River. There's a real potential now for an independent challenger to actually break through into that mayoral race. We're seeing, for example,
if I could just
Johnny
jump in,
Howard.
if I could just jump in very briefly, because I did want to get to one last question before I have to let you go, unfortunately. But I wanted to talk about one of your biggest issues, which is climate change, of course. Do you think that third parties like the Green Party are better suited to tackle this issue? And how do you see the issue progressing right now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because we are not on the take. We are not paid to basically stay the course, which is what all these campaign contributions from corporations and lobbyists do. They essentially ensure that real changes will not happen. But from the local level on up, we're seeing candidates who are standing up for creating jobs by moving to a green economy. The mythology that you have to choose between the economy or the environment is an absolute myth. If we get forced into that box, we will have neither, because we need a viable environment. We need energy sources. We need water to run the engines and cool them. We need food to feed our workers. We need housing if we're going to have an economy. So justice, the climate, and the environment and jobs all go together. That's why on the local level, on up to the national level, we are pushing for a Green New Deal, which can put 20 million people back to work, which can jumpstart the green economy, and make those wars for oil obsolete, which would bring hundreds of billions of dollars back into our economy.
Absolutely, Dr. Synan, and we'll have to see how those third-party candidates fare in the 2014 and 2016 election. Should be very interesting. Thank you for joining me so much, Dr. Jill Stein, 2012 Green Party presidential candidate.